Welcome to EnglishLiterature. As you all know, since its publication in 1667, Milton's Paradise Lost has been a major source of inspiration for writers as well as readers. British Library notes Paradise Lost was a source of inspiration and fascination for romantic poets such as William Blake and P.B. Shelley. Let me ask you a question. Is there any stories left unfinished? Yes, and let's go for it. The first question is, what is the purpose in writing Paradise Lost? Milton offers us the answer to that question in his Prolegomena to explain the ways of God to man. It is important to remember that Milton's motives in writing his great poem were religious, and we do him a great injustice if we don't appreciate that fact. Tell me something more about the poem. Of course, Paradise Lost is an immensely ambitious poem, bringing together the epic project of Homer and the text of the Bible. Strategic and logistical problems in writing the epic Paradise Lost. Milton could write in Latin as fluently as he could write in English, but he was also an English Puritan, and he wanted to make his poem accessible to his co-religionists. Milton compromised brilliantly on the language question by inventing a new language for poetry that was halfway between Latin and English. Here is a comment by T.S. Eliot on Miltonic poetic idiom. T.S. Eliot said, although he later changed his mind, that this Miltonic poetic idiom divorced poetry from the language of men. It is true that Milton went farther than most poets in recrafting the language in the interest of his art. Indeed, he invented a new dialect for poetry. Milton's second technical problem related to Rona. In the Poetics, Aristotle defined the two great literary genres as tragedy and epic. It is said that Milton too had his own doubts regarding Rona. Tragedy, as Aristotle defined it, is unified. Milton's poem Samson Agones was created almost strict Aristotelian lines. It rigorously obeys the unities of place, time, and action, has a classic catharsis, and avoids all scenes of blood or violence. Epic, again as defined by Aristotle, is loose, episodic, and digressive. It is narrative, not dramatic in its organization, whereas the material in tragedy is carefully structured, beginning strictly at the final, conclusive moment. Epic typically begins in medias res, in the middle of things. Milton toyed with the model of the epic poets, Homer and Virgil, and with that of the tragedian Sophocles. He made detailed plans for the dramatic tragedy he thought of writing, tentatively called Adam Unparadised. Even though Milton decided not to write a drama, he retained a dramatic conception of Satan in Paradise Lost. The best speeches in the poem are definitely Satan's. The poet William Blake observed that Milton was of the devil's party and did not know it. At its heart, the poem Paradise Lost is morally conflicted. Milton himself was a rebel and a Puritan who had taken up his pen against the king. How could he not have some sympathy for the arch-rebel Satan? Deep countercurrents in Paradise Lost drive against the poem's biblical orthodoxies and make the poem more complex. And secondly, Milton was a firm believer in the doctrine of felix culpa, that means happy sin, the belief that man was greater potentially because of the fall and redemption that he had been before. The loss and regaining of paradise, each individual struggles in life had the capacity for making us, given that we are possessed of free will, greater than we would have been if we were happily vegetating in Eden for all eternity. Let me ask you a question. How could a scholar like Milton think that the tree of knowledge should be forbidden to mankind? In the poem, he gets around this problem rather elegantly. The first one is the forbidden fruit. The apple represents nothing but a test of obedience. It does not relate to sex. Adam is learned enough to debate on equal terms with the archangel Raphael before the fall, but he hasn't gained mastery over what the Puritans called the old Adam, the propensity to rebel, sin, and break rules. Now, let's think about Milton's misogyny. The poem is very focused on the fall of man. Woman is there not as a partner, but as a subsidiary cause. Eve was created out of one of Adam's less important bonds, a rib. And it is clear in the poem that while Adam is for God, Eve is for the God in Adam. When Satan gets his first look at his two future victims, he sees two magnificent specimens, but he says of Adam, his fair large front and eyes blame declared, absolute rule. The implication is that he has absolute rule over Eve. When Eve succumbs to the serpent's seductive wiles, her error is really Adam's because he has not exercised his authority over her. When Eve returns, having eaten the apple, Adam's duty is clear to spurn her, but he does not because his carnal desire for her is greater than his godliness. The old Adam cannot be suppressed. What about the relationship between his poetry and life? Romantic myth holds that Milton, the blind poet, dictated his work to his daughters. In reality, he kept his daughters in ignorance. At least two of them probably could not even write. Milton's unhappy first marriage to the 16-year-old Mary Powell most likely led to his famous pamphlets in favor of divorce as a means of assuring liberty for men. Thank you for watching this video. If you like the video, please share and subscribe.